A woman tried to break into my car yesterday to rescue my dog from 60-degree weather. Anyone else have stories of idiotic vigilantes? A lady got concerned about my dog in my car too. It was funny because she didn't notice me in the car. My family had a Staffordshire Bull Terrier when I was young called Bert. Bert used to love dangling and tugging on tree branches and would spend up to 20 minutes just growling and dangling off a branch. Anyway, one day the police arrived and accused us of hanging a dog. My mum hadn't got a clue what was going on for a while until she realized. So she took the officer to the field where the dog was dangling and then shouted him. He came bounding over and when told to get down tree he sprinted back to attack the branch. The policeman just laughed and apologized. I still have no idea why someone would look at a dog which was supposedly being hanged and just ring the police instead of going and helping the dog. Very poor vigilantes in the UK. I once loaded my groceries and my son, who was about 2, into my car. Locked the car and walked 10 feet to put the cart up. This woman ran out of nowhere screaming that I had abandoned my son in the car to go shopping and called the police on her cell phone. I said I am right here putting up the cart. Not even walking in the direction of the store, she said she knew what I was up to. I just calmly got in my car and drove off. There was a fire ban in our area that I didn't know about, so when I fired up the grill my neighbor called the cops on me. When I asked her why did you call the police instead of just warning me, her response was quite literally, because I didn't want you to get a ticket. Dumbest thing I ever heard come out of someone's mouth. Luckily the police officer was cool and just made me put the fire out instead of giving me the ticket. When I was 15, I was vacationing with my family near the Ocean City Boardwalk. For those who don't know, it's basically a mile or two of stores, restaurants, and arcades positioned on a wooden walkway near the beach. Anyway, one day I'm on the boardwalk by myself, going to arcades, enjoying myself, when I accidentally drop my driver's permit down the cracks of the boardwalk. Not wanting to lose it, I head on down below the boardwalk. It's about 3 feet above the beach, and really easy to get under, and retrieve my card. As I exited, there was this guy standing near where I came out, and accused me of stealing someone's credit card. I told him it was my driver's permit, showed it to him, and walked off. Cue to about an hour later when I'm back at the rental house, when police knock on the door. They told me they were called about someone stealing a credit card. I explained the story, showed them my permit, and they laughed and walked off. Apparently, the guy followed me for another 30 minutes on the boardwalk, a 15-year-old, through arcades, and then half a mile back to the house, just so he could call the cops on me. It both pissed me off to no ends, and creeped me out knowing someone could stalk me that long without me noticing. Too long. Didn't read. Guy thinks I stole a credit card when I was retrieving my driver's permit. I show him the permit. Apparently stalks me for a good while. Follows me back to my house. And calls the cops on me. Edited because I queued a queue. I had a woman threaten to call Child Protective Services because my 13-month-old daughter was left alone in the car. I was filling the car with gas at the time. Our old horse died a few years ago. Obviously you can't just bury a 17-hand horse in the backyard. So we called up the renderer. Said he'd be around in about 3 days to pick her up. It's only one guy who serves the tri-state area, so 3 days is quick. Since she lay down in the pasture to die, we simply covered her with a piece of tarp and used some stones to weigh it down. A few hours later, our neighbor came over yelling at us that our dead horse smelled atrocious and was going to give her children nightmares. It was October, she wasn't rotting in 100+ degree weather, and where she had died was in a place that you could only see from our side of the road. The lady lived 2 houses away across the street. How the hell were her kids going to see it unless they were on our property? She called the police. Turns out, it was the sheriff, or whatever his title is, that answered. After confirming that she did not smell, he asked if we had called the renderer. We told him that he'd pick her up in 3 days. He turned to the lady and said sometimes it takes 3 weeks. Go home. When I was a kid, I saw a woman walk up to a station wagon with the window cracked open at a shopping center. She cooed at the dog, opened the unlocked door, then let the dog out. I thought she was the owner, but she went one way and the dog ran the other. I worked at an ice cream parlor a while back and we made our own ice cream. Waffle cones, chocolates, fudge, etc. Well, one day I'm making the waffle cones and I wasn't being careful. When I went to take a cone off the iron, the top of the iron fell on the top of my hand. I got a pretty good waffle shaped burn from it. No biggie. I got it taken care of. But I had a pretty good waffle pattern on my hand for a long time after that. Probably a month after it happened. I had a couple come in who saw my burn while I was giving them their ice cream. They were super concerned about it and I told them it was nothing. Just carelessness on my part. They wouldn't let it go and were convinced that I was being abused in the workplace. They wrote out all sorts of information for me. An abuse hotline, website, etc. Gave it to me before they left. They came in a couple more times and checked up on me. Just strange that they wouldn't accept that the burn wasn't intentional. In keeping with the dog-themed story trend, I was on my way to the park with my border collie Whippet Cross when I ran into an older, clearly slightly crazy woman who wanted to pet her. I lived in a part of my city with quite a few crazy people, and most of them were perfectly harmless. So I didn't think anything of it. At first she was friendly, scratching my dog's head and cooing gibberish. Then she suddenly turned on me and said she's so skinny. You must not be feeding her. I explained that she was part Whippet and that was just her natural build. But she wouldn't hear it. She felt my dog's side and started to shout, "I can feel her ribs." "I bet I can't feel your ribs. Why should you eat better than her?" She proceeded to stand up and poke me in the ribs. And I walked away, with her shouting down the street after me.